Good evening. Welcome. The neighborhoods, I'm Ginny Stimson, Chair of the Neighborhoods Committee, and I welcome you on behalf of the committee. This program we have tonight is really because of the response we had when we had the presentation about the First Hill Improvement Association, and we heard about an app where you could report things that were happening on First Hill, and that someone at Skyline had prepared this and was willing to come and be with us and explain to us how, what the app does and how it would help us. So thank you for making us aware of that, and thank you for coming. And Marcia has done the work of organizing this, and so she'll do the introductions. But I think it's such a treat to have someone who we can see even from the presentation how much she knows about what this is about. And we want to know too, right? We want to be part of the solution. So thank you.
I'm really happy to see so many of you here. Thank you for coming. Okay. I have to eat it practically. But it's interesting because I thought nobody knew about Find It, Fix It. But as a result of the advertising in the alert, people said, oh yeah, I have it on my phone, I use it all the time. And oh yeah, I use it all the time and it doesn't work. So I got about 50-50 responses about the app. So, but Lynda assures me, who's going to be talking to us, that she will make it, her introduction and her presentation is such that she gets 100% response, and I don't think it's because it's Lynda Pierce. I think it's because she knows how to do it, and she's going to give us that information. So we're very happy to welcome you, Lynda. Thank you very much for coming down the hill to see us. And she brought two friends, Mark and Dan, who are here to help us individually with our app after the presentation so that we can figure out, get the right thing on our phone and learn how to use it well. So please let's give a warm welcome to Lynda.
Hello, how are you guys? Well, thanks for the hospitality. So as Marcia said, when we go through this, we're going to do some background before we jump in and start using the app, because when I first started talking with people in Seattle about the app, I got the same response. Well, I've used that for years and it never works. And my husband and I have an incredibly effective response rate. So I'm going to share with you our secrets, because you'll also learn that there is power in numbers. The more of us reporting, the more resources the city will deploy to First Hill to make this the best community that it can be. So it's advantageous to all of us to participate and to get good response and to be a community. So, okay, so let's jump right in, and let me see if I can figure out here how I'm doing all of this. There we go. So you've already done the introductions. My name is Lynda Pierce. I'm a resident of Skyline. I've only been at Skyline about 6 months. My husband and I moved here from Bainbridge. And I'll tell you the rest of my story when we get into it. And I have with me two other residents from Skyline who are longer term and know more about the neighborhood and what we do and have been using Find It, Fix It for longer than I have. There is an equivalent app over in Kitsap County that supports them over there, but I have to say, I think the Seattle app is much better. So a lot more opportunity for it to do good here. But Mark and Rick use Find It, Fix It. They're also part of our trash community at Skyline. We're very trashy people over there. And we actually pick up garbage. So how Find It, Fix It became a thing at Skyline is when my husband and I moved here. We'll talk about that. We started picking up garbage. And so that sort of made us famous and led to Find It, Fix It. But also congratulations to Rick and Mark, because they're also part of our walkthrough group. And there was a big success today with the Senate Bill 5691, if I'm remembering, getting passed, which is a great resource for those of us in CCRCs. So they can answer lots of questions. And we would not be here at all if it were not for Ellen Green and the First Hill Improvement Association, who we love. We actually didn't have something like that on Bainbridge. So if you're not familiar with it, you should sign up for their newsletter, support them. They have done terrific things, even in the 6 months we've been here, and getting grants and support and city attention. Okay, but garbage. How did I get involved with garbage? So I am a native San Franciscan, and my husband and I moved from San Francisco to here about 10 years ago. But for decades, I was a long-distance runner, and I would run the Bay Trails in San Francisco. We lived on the water. And every weekend, the other 12.9 million people would come to the shoreline, and they would enjoy themselves. They would have picnics. They would have parties, and they would leave. And they would leave. And I would go running, and I would come home, and I would say to my husband, I can't stand it. And he got tired of listening to me. And he finally said to me one day, would you stop complaining and do something? And I looked out at the water and the beach, and I said, what can I possibly do? There's too much. It's too big. And he reminded me of a story that we use in the corporate world called the starfish story. And it helps when you think there's something overwhelming and you can't do anything about it. So I see some nods. Has anybody heard the starfish story? Okay, wonderful. So here's how it goes. There's a man who gets up in the morning, and he's walking along the beach, and he looks down the beach, and he sees a woman along the shoreline, and it looks like she's dancing. And as he gets closer, he realizes she's reaching down, she's picking something up, and she's throwing it into the ocean. And when he gets close enough, he says to her, what are you doing? And she says, I'm throwing starfish into the ocean. And of course, he looks at the same picture you and I are looking at, and he says, why would you do that? And she said, because if I don't, they'll die. And he said, you cannot possibly solve this problem. There are too many of them. And she reached down, she picked another one up, and she threw it into the ocean, and she said, for those of you that have heard this story, it made a difference to that one, right? So yes, we cannot, most of us, solve the entire problem of graffiti and garbage and homelessness and potholes and clogged drains in the city of Seattle. Most of us are not in a position to do that, but we can impact First Hill. We can impact the block that we live in. And we have a secret weapon. First of all, you don't have to be a superhero to have superpowers. You just need to have a good app, right? That's the way the world is today. There's an app for that, and there is an app for that. So how many of you have heard of Find It, Fix It? Oh, wow, goodness, wonderful. Okay, how many of you have it on your phone? Still good, I'm impressed. How many of you have submitted a Find It, Fix It using it? Four of you. Okay, now I'm going to make it really tough. How many of you have done it in the last week? Ellen, yay. Okay, well, what we're going to try to do is change that. So does it work? You know, you called it, there is always a debate of does it work, does it not work? And I hope that you saw at least a portion of the video presentation that was playing when you walked into the room. And I'll play it again at the end. That video presentation is one that I did. My husband and I moved to First Hill and Skyline on September 5th. Everything that you saw in that video was based on submissions that we did. Okay, so 6 months, and we'll talk about some numbers, but you can make a difference. It really does work. So, you know, these are just some of the examples for those of you that didn't see it. This is across the street from Skyline. Somebody actually painted in graffiti the entire wall that went down there. We reported that. It got fixed. This is an example of a homeless encampment, and we'll talk about all the categories. And you don't have to take notes. All of this is in Find It, Fix It. But, you know, homeless encampments, everything. And a shout out here to Ellen, because this, again, is right across the street from Skyline, and we were able to report Find It, Fix It to get the homeless encampment removed. Ellen was able to get the house removed. If you can see the burned out house in the background, that was an old mansion that burned down about 9 months ago, I think. Several times, yes. And, you know, Ellen and the First Hill Improvement Association were actually able to get the house torn down. So when you see the second picture, you'll notice there is no house there. Okay, so how many reports have my husband and I done personally in the last 178 days? 543. So this is our map. And wow, but you know what? That's less than 2 a day. Right? So if by doing 1 or 2 submissions a day, we can resolve 500 or so challenges that we have in our part of First Hill, imagine if we can multiply that. If only 5 or 6 of you join the movement. If more of you do, if we do at Skyline and we do at Horizon House and we do elsewhere, all of a sudden we amplify that. And as Ellen helped us understand when we did our presentation at Skyline, the numbers matter. So this app and this program was started by the mayor of Seattle. And again, there are other apps elsewhere, so there were other initiatives, but I think this one is particularly effective. And they, as a mayor and a city council, they look at the Find It, Fix It reports in the morning. And they look to see what submissions have they had. And when you do a Find It, Fix It, if you see that something is a repeat, that means more than one person has reported it. And if they see that there's a lot of activity in a geography, they will deploy those resources. And so the more of us on First Hill that are doing submissions, the more things we're reporting, the more specific those reports are. And we're going to talk very much about how to do those reports so that it makes it something the city can accomplish. The more impact we have and the more resources we get from the city up here on First Hill. And I'll be open enough to say, if the city has limited resources, I would love them in my neighborhood. I'm sure you would too. So, okay, so how does it work? You're going to see this if you've already signed into the app, you've seen it. If you haven't, you will see it when you sign into the app. But it's sort of their sales pitch of why would you do it and what do you get? So first of all, you can see that your report, one of the challenges I had when I started trying to fix things is, especially after moving to the Seattle area, of I don't know who to call. I'll see an issue, I'll see a challenge, and I'll want to report it, but I'm busy and I have other things to do and I don't know my way around the municipalities up here. The lovely thing about Find It, Fix It is you don't have to. All you have to do is submit your ticket, and the city does that legwork for you. So they will take the submission that you put in, and they'll route it to the proper resource who's responsible for taking care of that issue. If it's a private building owner or something, they have access to look up that building owner, and they have a lot more leverage than I do. So it's wonderful because you don't have to know who to call or how to get it solved. The city does that for you. And you can also see what's going on in your neighborhood. So you can pull up other reports that other people are doing. It makes you a good neighbor. And you know, you really get results and you can see what's happening. So when you log in to Find It, Fix It, there are 19 categories. And the city's kind of covered the majority of things that you might be interested in reporting. So these are the first 9 categories. There's details on the website about what these things might include. But again, if you get it wrong, just get the closest thing you can. And these are the second categories. And the last one, I'll point out specifically, general inquiry. If you're going to report something and none of the other categories work for you, just go to the last one. All right? And that they'll figure it out. Okay? The city, the mayor. The mayor and the city council are the ones that get these reports every day, and they are then electronically routed to the right resource. And you'll see as we go through, I'll actually show you some responses that come back. Because when you do a submission ticket, you introduce communication with the city. So you say, I am reporting a pothole, and you send that in, and you get a response back electronically that says, thank you for your submission, and a little more, depends on what you've submitted. And then you get a next response that says, your request to fill a pothole has been submitted, and somebody's going to go look at it. And then you get a response saying it's been submitted for being fixed, and it gives you the time frame of how long you should expect that to happen. And it tells you who to call if you don't see it happen. Or you can submit another find it, fix it. And then you're going to get a report from them electronically saying it's been fixed. And about 75, 80% of the time the answer is yes, and the other 25 to 20% the answer is no. So I submit another ticket. And it works. Okay, but we're going to talk about, it's not just about submitting tickets, what we find. It's about how you submit tickets. What do I mean by that? Let's spend a few minutes on it. And can you guys hear me okay? Too loud, too soft? No? Okay, good. Okay, so what makes a good submission? The first thing is try to be timely, right? Because we want city resources coming up here and seeing things, but and I'm guilty of this sometimes, I'll get busy, I'll take a picture and I'll go 4 days later, oh, I didn't submit that. So I'll want to submit it. Well, it might not be there anymore. And I do get those letters, emails back from the city saying, we went, we saw nothing. But at least they came, right? And you have to be specific, not just on what it is, but why it matters. And I'm going to give you some specific examples of the types of write-ups that I would do. But I'll give you a real-time one. I went this morning to get a manicure and pedicure. Thank you, I look great. And talking to my manicurist at Skyline, she was asking what I was doing, and I said, oh, I'm going to go to Horizon House tonight. I was telling her what I'm doing, and she said, oh, I want that app. So I logged her in, and of course I'm an advocate for it, so I got her all signed up, and she said to me, she said, I just was down at Virginia Mason, and I came out, and I was walking down the sidewalk, and there was a board in front of me, and I didn't see it, and it had some nails sticking up, and I tripped on it. And she hurt herself. She's okay, but she hurt herself. And she said, can I report that? And I said, absolutely you can. But think about how you're going to report it. So if you're doing that ticket and you take a picture of it and you submit it to the city and you say, there's a board on the sidewalk by Virginia Mason. Okay, we'll get there. But if you say, there is a board on the sidewalk of Virginia Mason on the corner of Seneca and Terry. It is across the sidewalk and has exposed rusty nails poking out of it. In an area where people are using walkers and are mobility challenged, don't feel well, and are going to the doctor, and they're going to trip on it, and I'm concerned about safety risks. A or B? Right? B is going to get you a lot more response and a lot more quickly. Now, I'll say this, absolutely always 100% of the time be accurate. Don't make it up. Don't blow it out of proportion. Be truthful, be honest, but be specific, right? Because and we'll talk, too, about whether you want the city to know your email and who you are or not. But you'll have a profile, and your reports will have a profile. And so when you submit that information, if you just kind of make things up to make it sound more difficult or worse than it is, this is the world of AI, right? It's very easy for them to track that kind of thing. And, most of the things that you report are significant enough that the city should respond and wants to respond. that make sense? Okay. And be comprehensive. And we're going to talk about listing all of the concerns, and I'll show you some examples. So when you saw the video, you saw some pictures of where there was a homeless encampment, and there was drug dealing, and there was graffiti, and there was garbage. How many reports do you think I submit? 4. Exactly. Yes. Why? Because every city department is different that responds to these things. So I want to give them the maximum opportunity to be helpful, right? So I'm gonna help them, help me, help us. I'm going to break it down, and I'm going to say, hey, this is graffiti. Hey, this is garbage. Hey, this is homeless, etc. Okay? And it works. It actually makes a difference. And nothing is too small. And I think the thing where I mean that the most is graffiti. And again, if you had a chance to see the presentation, there was a Q&A there about, is graffiti harmful? Is it not? Did anybody see the answer to that? Yeah, it's very harmful. Graffiti is a harbinger of other crimes. And it's usually gang related. It has a high correlation with drug activity. And so if you live in a neighborhood that's got a lot of malicious graffiti, there is graffiti that's art, and I included that in the presentation, but that's not what we report, and it's not usually what we see up here, right? So little tagging, small things are typically precursors to larger things. So, when you're walking along, if you see something small and you've got a minute, take 30 seconds of that minute and do a submission. Whether it's a small garbage can that's overflowing or a huge dumpster, little bit of graffiti, small board in the way of a sidewalk. We have to keep on top of it. Okay, so graffiti as vandalism, it is vandalism, especially if you're a property owner, but it hurts all of us. So these are, again, real examples of submissions that my husband and I have done. So some things to note, when you submit stuff, we don't want city resources driving around going, where was that? I can't find it. So they're going to ask you some questions, but the more specific you can be, the better. So parking meters, and I got to say, I don't know who owns these parking pay stations, but they rock. I mean, those people, they come out in 4 hours. I mean, they are fast. But when I take a picture of the graffiti so that they can see it. And I also take a picture of the sign above the pay station, which has the pay station number. So when you put it in, they know exactly which pay station it is. And they will come out promptly. I also, like if you look at the telephone pole in the middle, you see a yellow tag. That's a pole number. So I include the pole numbers in my submissions. I'm going to leave you breadcrumbs. You can't miss it. Keep that in the back of your mind, okay? And telephone poles themselves are different than signs on telephone poles. It's 2 different departments. I know. Just go with it, right? So the people that are responsible for the poles are different than the people that are responsible for the signs. Sign maintenance, telephone poles. Line bikes, these drive me crazy. First of all, they try to run us over on the sidewalks, but they're also covered in graffiti half the time they're broken. So if they're broken, report them. If they're graffiti covered, report them. But be sure to get the tag numbers. So if you see down in the corner, there's a little identifier for those bikes. So if you tell the bike company or the scooter company where it is, they actually do know, but the city knows they know if you give them a tag number. And then post office boxes, I have to say, they are the slowest to respond. But they did just come through our part of First Hill about 3 weeks ago, and they painted all of our mailboxes. So that was lovely. Number of them are, and again, lessons with Find It, Fix It. A number of them have new graffiti. So what do? Report it again. Exactly. So on some of these things, again, there's a telephone or a light pole with a ticket number on it. And Graffiti on buildings, something that I learned because I actually did a find it, fix it wrong. I hit the wrong button. One of the things when you report graffiti, if it's on a building, it's going to ask you, are you the building owner? And of course, I don't own a building, I live at Skyline. So I say no. Well, one time I was in a hurry and I hit yes. Well, that was very educational. What did I find? I got a message back from the city, and the city said, we understand that you're the building owner that has this building with graffiti on it located at, and if you're not able to fix it yourself within 5 days, we have a graffiti abatement volunteer team that will come and fix it for you. No, it's free. Totally free. It's a volunteer program of people just like us, and their thing, my thing is picking up garbage, their thing is cleaning graffiti. I don't charge to pick up garbage, by the way. I was thrilled, right? So all they have to do is fill out a form that gives the graffiti abatement volunteer team the opportunity to access their property without liability, and they will come and clean your graffiti for you. So there's no excuse, right? And again, if you look at the other picture, you'll see graffiti on the bus stop and you'll see graffiti on the building. How many submissions would I do? 2. Yes. Why? Because Seattle Metro is responsible for the bus stop, and the building owner is responsible for the building. Okay? All right. Let's talk about something that is always a hot topic, and that is unauthorized encampments. People feel differently about this. There's people on all sides of the spectrum, and that's fine, but I think we all have the same objective, and that objective is to get people off of our streets into resources so that they can get the help that they need and we can walk down our sidewalks, right? Doesn't matter whether you come from the right, left, or middle. Hopefully we can agree on that. But one of the things I hear very frequently is, I have called the city for years and they have done nothing about homeless encampments. Why should I try reporting now? So, does anybody know the answer to that question? What changed? Say it again. It's in writing. We're submitting something in writing. That makes a difference. So, June 28th, 2024. So it has been for quite some time. Some people know, some people don't. We knew in San Francisco a long time ago that it was ruled by the Supreme Court many years ago that it is cruel and unusual punishment to make people leave if they are camped on the streets, if they're camped on sidewalks, municipal properties, parks, streets, things like that. So that was unconstitutional. If you did not have a specific place for them to go, or if they chose not to go to that place you had. So the city of Grants Pass, Oregon, which had a tremendous homeless problem, challenged that, and it went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court said, you know what? It's not. And on that very day, the governor of the state of California stood up on the steps and said, it's time to clean it up. And, if you take Portland, Oregon, as an example, they just passed a law about a month ago, I think it was, that said it is illegal to camp on the streets of Portland, which also has a significant homeless problem. But at the same time, in the first 2 months of this year, they opened up 2,000 new low-income housing opportunities. So again, there has to be movement on both sides of this equation. You can't tie the hands of one side and not provide resources to the other side and expect the problem to be fixed. So I think a lot of cities have seen, and states have seen improvement in some of these things. So it's important to report it because it's in writing, the city knows about it, and contrary to what most people think, it was in the presentation, are the Seattle Police Department the first to respond to homeless encampment issues? No, they are not. They actually are not. And this is a great program they have in Seattle. Again, it doesn't necessarily help to send police to deal with homelessness. That's not their expertise and their forte, and they don't have access to the resources. So Seattle has put together something called the Unified Care Team. It is a cross-functional team of people who deploy resources in response to reports of homelessness. And again, it is very important that you be specific in your reports. So if there are animals present, they need to know that. If there are minors present, they need to know that. If there's drug use, they need to know that. If there is hazardous waste, to include human waste, they need to know that. Those are all different resources that help solve these problems. But this team is chartered with getting people the resources that they need so that they can get off the streets. So if they need housing, if they need food, if they need rehab, if they need animal support, etc. So they're the ones that come. And when you get your responses to reports on homeless encampments, it'll explain that. So again, these are all reports close by. One there is close to you. That's Freeway Park. These others, down here's Freeway Park. That's our fountain right across the street from Skyline. But let me give you a few specific tips on homeless encampments. First of all, always be polite. When you're taking photographs, when you're asking people if they need help, be safe, keep a distance. And also be proactive. These are people who can use help, and so getting those reports in quickly is helpful. And be specific in all of the things that you see. So if they're blocking access, note that. To what are they blocking access? If there's garbage, needles, drugs, rats. I've taken pictures of rats and sent them to the city when they're, dead rats laying around. If you see people with medical issues, note that. Yes? Yes. Well, with one exception. Let me see if I can go back here. I don't know if I can go back. But in the one before, there was also graffiti in the background. So I reported the graffiti too. But yes, when it comes to the homeless encampments, the United Care team, they actually do coordinate the response. So if there's garbage that has to be picked up, if there's rehab that needs to be deployed, whatever. Yes, they actually, when it comes to homeless encampments, they will take responsibility for all of those different issues. But you'll notice in this one, they don't clean up the graffiti, for example. So this is an example where there was an individual, camper we'll call him, who showed up at a bus stop across the street from St. James Cathedral. He took over the bus stop, and we reported it, and it took the city about 3 days to come out and respond to that. The United Care team came, and they helped him find an alternative residence. And within 24 hours, he was back. That's the second picture. He moved in again. And when you look at the picture, there's all sorts of things there. You can see, and my husband is lovely, and he makes friends with all of the different homeless people and talks to them and learns their stories. And so, we found that he had just left Harbor View and gotten out of the hospital, and so we had some medical issues and, so on and so forth. But this is an example of a specific response that we sent. There's a homeless person who appears to need medical attention, blocking access to a bus shelter used by seniors, parishioners, and commuters. It's stop number 41990 on 9th Avenue across from St. James. The shelter is filled with garbage, needles, human waste, and dead rats. This is when I sent pictures of all the dead rats. And the camper was yelling profanities and threatening pedestrians, so they couldn't use that side of the street, and it was blocking access to the parking and to that particular apartment building there. And poses a risk to public safety and deprives us the right to use the resources that the city says we have. Took them 4 hours, and they were back. The city. Took the city 4 hours to come back. So we haven't seen him since. Knock on wood. Okay, garbage and illegal dumping. These are some of our alleys. Just lovely. And again, be specific on some of these. So if you look at the one up the top, you'll see there's furniture, and there's garbage in the alley, and there's graffiti on the dumpster. So each of those is a separate resource. So I report the furniture, because that's one set of waste management that comes gets it, and the garbage in the alley, and the graffiti on the dumpster. So again, the more people we have coming to respond to these things, the more likely we are to solve the whole challenge. The refrigerator, which was dumped right down the street from us at Skyline, again, when we reported that, we said it's not just a dumped refrigerator, it's a refrigerator that's dumped in a sidewalk in front of an ADA access, half a block from a community with an elderly population that uses wheelchairs and walkers, and we have 2 residents with seeing eye dogs. So, there you go. And so, this is an example of the type of response that you get from the city that says, this one, the first one you get says, we got your report. This one says it's been dispatched for collection. And it always gives you a timeline. So it will tell you how long should you expect before you get a response to your submission. And if you don't get if you go out there and that refrigerator's still there in 6 days, report it again. All right? Oh, I forgot to show you one thing. Well, we'll do it. Broken lights, again, if you saw the video presentation, lights reduce crime. So if you see lights that are out, broken lights, always report those. And again, be specific. These are on the Cherry Street stairs. We use those at Skyline, but also O'Day High School. The boys there use those to run the stairs, and they do it early in the morning, and they do it after school. And this was in the dead of winter. It's very dangerous for them to do that. Clogged drains, again, you can send something in that says the drains are clogged, please help. Or you can send something in that says the drains are clogged, they're blocking access to a sidewalk, and you know what I'm going to say. Half a block from a community that's got residents who are elderly, blah, 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 right? All true, all accurate. They can look up the address. Okay, so are you convinced? All right, yay. Okay, but just to give you a little bit more hope, there is hope, right? These are also alleyways in our community, and they're very clean because the neighbors report they stay on top, they're very attentive. The 3 pictures to your right, my left, that's Seattle University. And when you think about the starfish story, I don't know about you guys, but from Skyline, a lot of us walk to Seattle University because it's absolutely beautiful. How many people do you think the University of Seattle employs to clean up garbage and report issues? 18? 5? This is Seattle University. Seattle University. 0? You're closest. 1 person, her name is Sophia. She works 4 days a week. But her job is to walk Seattle University 4 days a week. She picks up garbage. If you go there and you see her, she's lovely. You should talk to her and say hi. Thank her. That's really important. Thank her. And she also has a walkie-talkie and she reports everything. Needles, homeless people, broken lights, sidewalks that are uneven, etc. 1 person, 4 days a week, 50 acres. Right? We can do this. Be a starfish. All right? Okay, so I'm going to actually do a demonstration. Let me go here. So where do you find it, fix it? If you have your apps, your phones, and you haven't done this yet, you can find the app on the App Store if you have an iPhone, and you can find the app on the Android store if you have an Android. Okay, and hopefully you guys have better Wi-Fi than we have at Skyline in our public rooms, and you can download it. But you're looking for this little app, Seattle Find It, Fix It. If you put that into the iPhone store or the Android store, you should be able to pop that up, and it will say Get, and you should download that. So while you're doing that, I'm going to show you what you're going to see and some decisions that you're going to make. Okay? So you're looking at what the app's going to look like as soon as you get it downloaded. You can't get in? You're going to your Android store or your App Store. So let me... Okay. It's not the Apple Store. So it's the, hold on, let me get out of here, and I'm going to show you. Okay, this is my phone. All right. So I'm less helpful on an Android, but if you have an iPhone, do you see this icon that says 4? Looks like a little tent camper. Looks sort of like an A, but it's the App Store. Okay? So you're going to go to the App Store. And you're going to type in Find It. And do you see the fourth one down? It says Seattle Find It, Fix It. So I'm going to select Find It, Fix It, and you're looking for this app right here. All right, so let me turn this off for a minute. And we'll come back to that. But I want to show you, as you go through, some things, decisions that you're going to have to make, and you're going to need to decide which way you want them. So hold on. Okay, so it is important to note that any submissions through Find It, Fix It, because this is a city app, are subject to Washington State Public Records Disclosure Acts. Okay? So if you submit something to Find It, Fix It, and someone submits a public records disclosure request, they'll get access to these reports, which is not a bad thing. Another good reason to always be honest and truthful. Some people like to have their name associated with their submissions. Ellen is one of them. So Ellen's job is to do these kinds of things. And as she said to me before, she wants to have her name all over them. That's wonderful. I'm a little bit, despite what it looks like up here, shy and retiring. I would rather stay in the background, right? And so when you get to the screen that asks for your contact information, you're going to have a chance to fill in your name. That is an asterisk field. It must have something in it. When you look at my mail responses, I don't know if you noticed, but it said Dear Dash. So when I got to that field, I put a dash. I can put a period. My mother put her initials. It doesn't actually have to be your name. So if you do not want your name on your submissions, don't put your name in that field. Put something else, anything you want, nickname, whatever. There is a feature on iPhone and Android now called Hide My Email. So you do not have to submit your email or your phone. You may leave those fields blank. They are not required. But if you want to get all those fantastic little responses that tell you what's happening to your report, you have to have an email. So when you get to that field, do not, I'm going to say it again, do not type your email. Instead, select this, which says Hide My Email. And what Android and Apple will do is generate a fictitious email that is connected on the back end to your email. So the only one that knows that my mother is Album Wolf whatever is Apple. That's it. So her email is hidden behind that email. So she gets all of her updates and all of her responses, but as far as the city knows, it's coming from somebody Wolf. Okay? Does that make sense? I'll show you how to change it if you've already signed in. So this is me, right? I'm Dash, and I'm Hide My Email. So I don't know if you noticed that when I was showing you all of the responses I got, but the city knows me as Hide My Email and Dash. Whoops. Okay. So the other things that it's going to ask you are these things. So one of them is location, okay? It's going to ask you to share your location. You can choose to share it all the time. You can choose to be specific or not. If you want to get the most out of the app, but you don't want the app to know where you are all the time, and again, I'm one of those who prefers to not share that, I select while using the app, okay? And I do share precise location, because then when you take a picture, it's going to find the location exactly where you took that picture for you, and you don't have to scroll around, okay? It's up to you which ones of these you choose, but I want you to know what you're choosing. The other thing it's going to ask you is whether or not to share your photos. So you have to share your camera and your photos in order for you to be able to take pictures to submit. You notice on my phone, I have 9,756 photos and 429 videos, right? I do not want the city of Seattle to have access to all of those. So I have selected limited access and only to the photos that I select. Okay? You're going to see all this, but I want you to know what you're looking for. You need to make sure that cell data is turned on so that when you're out on the street, you can do your reports, and you need to give them access to your camera. All right? Okay, so let me get out of this, and I'm going to share my screen one more time. Okay, so we're going to do this step by step. You've downloaded the app, okay? You went to the App Store, the Android store, and now the question everybody says to me is, where to go? Right? Where did it go? So you have a search button here that you can use, or you can scroll to the last screen on your phone, which is your library, which gives you everything. And you're looking for this guy, Chief Seattle, right here, okay? So I'm going to open that up. Now, I have a lot of reports here, but the first thing you're going to see is a new report. And you haven't submitted a report before. Or maybe you have. And if you have, I can show you how to change the decisions that you've made. But select that button, and it's going to pop up with a report field. And you're going to type something in. What I would suggest you do, Seattle's going to go crazy in the morning, is just type test. This is a test, okay? So just type test. Yeah, we're going to submit it. The mayor's going to figure it out. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried. Okay, so when you're done with that, now one thing to note here, again, if I can just get your attention, I like to do dictation because I do long submissions, right? I give a lot of detail, so I like to do dictation and speak into my phone. I'm assuming you know how to do that, but if you don't, you tap this little microphone down here. So watch this. I've tapped my microphone, and I'm going to have it record everything that I say, comma, so that I don't need to do that, period. Now, isn't that magical? There should be a microphone down on the bottom if you are in the text box. Yeah, even Android has it, okay? Yeah. And you can actually use that feature for text messages, for emails, for all sorts of wonderful things. Okay, so let's press on. Okay, so here I have two choices. I can choose to use my camera, or I can choose to use a photograph that I took earlier. Okay, so the camera part's easy. I'm going to tap my camera. If you have not done this before, it's going to come, there we go, hello. Okay, it's going to ask you if you can have access to your camera, and you're going to select yes. Okay? Otherwise, if you've already done that, you just point the camera at what you want to take a picture of. And remember, if we're actually going to submit this, take a picture of the wall. Don't take a picture of me. If you have a photograph already, let me just show you this. You tap the other button. And when you do this, this is where it asks you the question. So you might want to do it just so you can answer the question of, do you want to give it access to all of your photographs? And remember what we answered? No, right? Not all 9,000, no. So what happens is I pulled up and I took a bunch of photographs just so we'd have some things to report here. So let's pick this homeless person. And I've already told it can only access certain photos. So now it's going to prompt me and say, are you sure? Really? And I'm going to say, yes, keep the current selection. Okay? So I'm going to keep the current selection. And there's my photograph. If I want to add another photograph, I just do it again. And I pick another picture. Okay? But I have to tell it what pictures I want. Okay, so now we're going to click next. Down here in the corner, you're going to click next. Okay, and these, while it's loading, these are our, if you remember how many, 19 categories. Okay, now I entered something that was sort of gibberish, but normally it's going to come up with one at the top. So it actually, again, uses AI. And if you're doing graffiti and you're saying there's graffiti on the parking meter, it'll usually put graffiti at the top to make it easy for you. But if not, you just scroll through these and you select the item which is closest to what you're reporting. And if you can't find anything else, you select general. So I'm just going to select graffiti so that you can see what a report does. So I'm going to select graffiti, and it knows that I'm at Horizon House, right? Now, if this is the first time you're doing this, so just go with me and select graffiti, so we're all doing the same thing. If it's the first time you've done this, this is, depending on your phone, maybe where it asks you whether or not you turn on location service. And whether you do that all the time or only when you're using the app. And again, I personally select only when I'm using the app. Now, just because it defaults here, again, I like to take pictures and then go home and do my submissions. All you have to do to move it is put your fingers on the screen and move it. And you just move it around. So if I want to say, no, I'm really over at the Sunset Club, I can do that, okay? You just move it around. So we're going to click next, and then each category has a different set of prompts. So they're not all going to be the same. If it's graffiti, it's one set of prompts. If it's a homeless encampment, it's another set of prompts. But you just answer the questions. So, you know, they're not complicated. Just answer to the best of your knowledge. So in this case, I'm going to click on that, and it's going to ask me, where is the graffiti? And this is where you make decisions. It's on a traffic sign. It's on a signal pole. It's on a trash dumpster. It's on the street or the sidewalk. It's on a retaining wall. Okay? So if it's not listed, do the best that you can. Get the closest thing. Okay? So I'm just going to say it's on a retaining wall. Now, again, there are some things that I do, and this, again, helps with the response, but it's also accurate. The second question it asks for graffiti is the graffiti obscene, racial, or hateful? Can anybody in here actually read graffiti? Yeah, I can't. No. So for me, it's obscene, hurtful, because I don't like it in my neighborhood, and I cannot tell you what it says. So in this case, I almost always click yes. Now, sometimes it'll be a heart and so loves such and such, in which case the answer is no. And then you click next. This is where you can see that my email is hidden. So this is where the report's going to go in under, okay, because I've selected to hide my email. So I'm going to click next. It's going to give me one more chance to confirm what I'm doing. And then I can go back if I want. And I'm not going to submit this, so I won't waste the city's time. But then I hit submit. And once I'm done, that's it. And when you do it the second time, and then it'll show up in your queue. And it'll just say new, it's open, it's resolved, whatever it is. If there were a couple of you that asked, how do I change my settings? So when you're in the app, there are 3 little bars up in the top left-hand corner. Okay? Those 3 little bars are your menu. Select that. And it's going to give you all of the settings. So if you go to the second to last one here, where it says settings, click on that. And there's 2 things. There's your profile. And I want you to watch this. I'm just going to click on this. And this will show you how the hide my email comes up. So here, when I click on this box that has nothing in it, it pops up and it says, do you want to use your actual email or do you want to use hide my email? So I'm going to click hide my email, and Apple comes up and says, here's the fictitious email that we've assigned to you, and it forwards every email to your actual email. So that one's fine. I don't mind that one at all. I'm going to click continue. And I am not going to enter my phone. It is not a required field. Okay? The other one says about. So when I click on about, this gives me all sorts of things in here. One of them is permissions. So if you're not sure if you did the right thing on location or photographs, you go to permissions. And that gives you all of those fields. So cell data is selected. My photos are limited access. My location is while using. And if you see it has a little gray caret next to it, I can select that little caret and it gives me the chance to change my decision. Okay? So I can go to full access, which I would personally never do, or I can remove access totally, etc. Okay? So that is Find It, Fix It, 1A, 1B, and 100A and B. There you go. Questions? You're probably exhausted at this point. I don't know if you have one. After we did our session, our IT person at Skyline is an Android person, and so he was able to actually help people with some of these things on Androids. So hopefully, I don't know if you have an IT person here who can do that. But once you get these decisions made, you don't have to make them again. You just take a photograph and move on. Yes, ma'am. So with graffiti, it's hard to tell whether it's positive or negative. So again, I've seen things that are hearts with people's initials, and those I'll say no. I mean, it's not offensive. It's still destructive, but it's not offensive. But these things with all sorts of stuff, I mean, in the absence of knowing any better, it does offend me to walk by and see it. So I say yes. But that's a personal choice, right? That's just what I do.
I occasionally see it. I can have access to a view of Freeway Park.
Okay.
They'll clear out all the temps occasionally.
Yes.
A new one will show up.
Yes.
And we just take a picture and submit that. If a new one shows up.
Yes, you can. So the question was, you live next to Freeway Park, and I know thanks to Ellen recently, they came through and cleaned things up, but they do come through and clean things up. And if a tent reappears, immediately take a photograph and submit it. Immediately. Do it when it's one tent, not 10 tents. Yes. And if they leave, like our camper, if they leave and come back, submit it again.
Kind of from a distance, so you don't know exactly what's.
I do that actually because we look over at the public housing next to Harborview. And so I stand in my window and I scan in with my phone and I take a picture, and they can tell that it's from the rooftop because it catches the rooftop next to it, and I report them, and they still come. And I can't report whether there's garbage or needles, but I just report the tent, and it works. Yeah.
And I have an Android phone.
Oh, good. We have an Android person here who can probably help. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? I probably outstayed my welcome, Gina and Marcia. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I think thank you very much, Lynda. I think we have found it interesting, challenging, but it does get easier. Anne Marie is a great Apple person that can help us, and Margaret King can help you if you have an Android. Margaret King. Okay? Are we all set? So let's